Traits. A powerful feature in Rust helps to define functionality for a particular type, as well as share it with other types. By types, I mean the special types of data in Rust, like structs, enums, unions, tuples, references, pointers, function pointers, or array types. So each of these types can behave in a certain manner in the program, based on requirements. And that is exactly what traits help us to define. Traits can be related to interfaces in other languages, although with some differences. A type's behaviors are nothing but methods that can be called on that type, and same methods can be shared with other types. So trait definitions are a way to group method signatures together to define a set of behaviors necessary to accomplish some purpose. Suppose we have 3 structs for dog, cat, and bird. Each of these animals can make sound. So sound can be a trait for these animals. So we can declare a common trait called sound, and the behavior for this can be defined by a method called makeSound. This is the method signature for the trait. As parameter, it takes the immutable reference of the instance of the type on which this method will be called, and it will return a string slice. Notice we have a semicolon at the end of the signature, and there is no method body. This is because it is an abstract method. So whichever type would implement this trait has to provide body for all the methods present in that trait. So let's implement the trait for each of the animal struct. First, implement sound trait for dog. The behavior is make sound, and the sound the dog would make is woof. Similarly, we can implement the traits for cat and bird. Now, individually, each of these types have their own makeSound method. But if we want to get the sound of the animals, we need to write separate functions for each of them. Like, if we want to get the dog sound, we need to specifically create a function to get the sound of the dog and pass the dog type so that it returns woof. If we want to get the sound of the cat, we can't replace this dog with cat, since this function only takes the dog type. So for cat, we need to create a separate function. And again, same for bird. This is code duplication. What we really want is one common function to get animal sound and pass any animal as the parameter to get the specific sound of that animal returned. But we don't have a common animal type, since inheritance does not exist in Rust. Instead, what we have is all the animals with a common trait, which is sound. So what we can do is we can reference all types that implements the trait sound and then simply call the makeSound method. Now in the main function, we can create instance of the types dog, cat, and bird. And to print the sound, we can use the common function and pass the reference of the instance. See, this same function is now accepting all the different animal types, all because the animals shared a common trait. If we run this program, we will get the output like this: woof, meow, and chirp. We have a set of animals now in the program. So ideally, we can have collection of animals. But if we create a vector like this, logically yes, they may make sense, but the types are not same. We have completely 3 different types in the collection. But a vector should always hold same type of elements. Also, Rust has to know what the vector is storing at compile time. So if we execute this line, Rust will throw a compile time error. What we really need here is dynamic dispatch. It means that the type of values this vector can store can be declared at runtime. To achieve this, we can modify the type of the variable like this. It means that this vector can store any type of value which has the sound trait. Now Rust will not throw any error and will compile fine. We can also iterate through the elements in the vector and call the makeSound method to get the sounds. In the previous function as well, instead of static dispatch, we can use dynamic dispatch, and the output in all these cases will remain the same. So this is how we can achieve polymorphism in Rust, in a way. Instead of using the type definition, we can assign generics and use it. Like in this function, we can add the generic and then use it as the type of the parameter. This makes the generic type trait bound. So that means any generic type is bound by the trait implemented by that type. What you have seen so far is functional trait, where a method is given which has to be implemented if we want to use the trait. Now, there can be traits which does not have any method for behavior, just empty trait. These traits are called marker traits. These are ideal to mark or group certain types. In our example, let's consider we have a struct type for sharks. But sharks don't make any sound. At least that's what I remember. Not sure about any latest discovery. Anyway, because of this, we can't implement the sound trait for shark. But all these types are animals. So we can group it together using a marker trait animal. We can now implement the animal trait for all these types. So we have 4 animals, but only 3 of them make sound. Now we can have a collection for all the animals without any issue. If you want to get types with multiple traits, you can just add them using the plus symbol. It's not really required here in our example, just for your knowledge I'm showing it. There are many marker traits predefined by the compiler, like send, senc, unpin. Usually they are available in the marker module of standard library. In my earlier videos, do you remember how many times I have mentioned this is a trait, that is a trait? For example, the debug trait. We used it to print special data types, for example, printing enums. It means that the enum implemented the debug trait and provides the body for the fmt method. So whenever the compiler encounters this during execution, behind the scenes it actually runs the method value.fmt and pass the formatter. Here, formatter is Rust's output writer. It receives your formatted text and writes it to the destination, like terminal, string or log file. So when a code like this is present, it is actually expands to this. Traits provide type placeholders as well. This is useful when you don't know what data type you will be working with while declaring the trait. For example, let's say we have a trait called container, and this container has a method signature where we want to return the first item of the container. This container trait can be used for integer values or string values. We don't know for sure how or where this trait can be implemented. That's when associated types can be used. We can just use the keyword type to define an item. And in the return type of the method, we can return the item of self. Let's look at an implementation of this trait now. We have a tuple struct that will contain 2 i32 integers. For this numbers struct, we want to implement the container trait. Here, this numbers struct contains i32 values, so we use the type as i32. And while implementing the method, we can refer to this item as return type. This signature will infer that the return type is an i32 value, so we can just return the value of 0 index as expression. Exact same thing we can do for struct with string values. Behavior will remain the same. We can call these functions as well. And on running the program, it will return the first items, that is 42 for numbers and hello for words. I have taken a simple example with a simple data type, but you can literally use any type you want as long as you follow the Rust compiler rules. I believe I have said inheritance does not exist in Rust. It's true that Rust does not have a class inheritance like we have in languages like C++ or Java, but traits can inherit from other traits, often called supertraits in Rust. Suppose we have a trait for pet, and a pet should always have a name. We can have a golden retriever as a pet, but golden retriever is a dog, so dog is another trait for golden retriever. But dog can have all the traits of a pet, so this dog trait can inherit from pet trait. Now for golden retriever, if we implement the dog trait, we also have to implement the pet trait, because dog inherits pet as well. If we don't implement the super trait, which is this pet trait here, Rust compiler will throw error and won't compile. Now, once all the implementation is done, we can create a golden retriever instance and call methods of both pet trait, which is the name method, and the dog trait, which is the legs method. The output will be the name and leg values. Traits in Rust also provide something called a blanket implementation. This is useful for having one trait for all types that meet a condition. Say for example, we have a point struct and a user struct. Point takes two integer values for denoting coordinates, and user takes a string value as name. Both are structs but completely different types. Let's implement the display trait for both the structs. Display trait belongs to the FMT module and is predefined in the Rust compiler. It is by default implemented for all the primitive data types. It can also be used to implement the FMT method, allowing custom structs or enums to be printed using this format placeholder in println or format macros. So it is different from the debug format placeholder, which comes with the debug trait for debugging. So now simply we can print these structs in the main function using the print macro. Same as other data types like this U64 value. The output will be like this. Now I want to implement a method to all the types that implement the display trait. We can have a custom trait called value, and this trait needs to have a method getValue to return whatever the value is as a string. We can now implement this trait manually for all the types we have. But that's a lot of code to write. Remember, we want this trait to be implemented for all the types that has already implemented the display trait. That's the condition. So the best way is to have a blanket implementation. So we can write implement value for t. This t is the generic type. Now the condition is where t is the type that has already implemented the display trait. So this is how we write the condition. Now we can have the getValue method implemented, which returns the value is, then whatever the self type is. In the main function also, without writing any new code, we can just call the getValue method for all these types, including this U64. The output will be like this. If you want to add this method for multiple traits, not only just display, then you can add this using the plus sign. Of course, you need to derive the debug trait to use it, but I hope you got the idea. Yeah, so this is what basically trait is. You can add behavior methods to all the custom types and then implement them. Or you can just pull in the predefined traits and use it. Just need to keep one thing in mind. You either need to own the trait or the type, but you can't implement foreign traits on foreign types. By foreign, I mean something that you yourself didn't implement in the program. This is called the orphan rule, and it is absolutely vital for conflicting traits and type safety. So you can now enhance your program using traits, but don't overuse it. That would increase complexity and will make the code less readable. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next one.